Welcome back to another STS Knows Best. I am your steak technology specialist, Jared, and I'm here to help you with some cool hacks on how to make your meeting house broadcasts all that they can be. Today, I'm going to talk about putting some on-screen text. We all kind of appreciate how neat it is in general conference when the speaker gets up and you see on the lower third their name shows up and their title and some of those neat things. And it'd be really cool if you have the ability and you're starting to feel really confident with broadcasting. There is free tools that we have already explored in some of these previous videos in the series that show you how to do something like that in your meetings. And it's not as hard as you might think. It's actually quite easy. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to put speaker names and titles into the bottom of your broadcasts. So first, let me go ahead and share my screen with you. And here you can see I have, I'm using the studio mode, which I highly recommend. I've also already turned on my virtual camera and have a practice broadcast with Zoom down here. So this window is what people who are on Zoom are going to see. And then this side is my preview side, so I can see stuff before I make it visible to others. And then this side is my program feed. So this is what I'm feeding to Zoom. All right, and down here, I have one that is main, and there's other videos out there you can go look at on how to create a welcome screen, how to do a video loop while we're waiting for the sacrament to finish, or just a simple one like that. Now, in this one, I'm going to talk about adding text again, because we did talk about that a little on others, but we're going to inlay text that we're going to add and take away from the video on demand, like people's names. There's a few ways to do that. I find that there's two ways, and I'll show you both, and you can pick whichever way you like best. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add text like we did earlier. So I'm going to go to, if I want to add the text onto the main screen as an option, then I will go to main, and then under sources at the bottom, I'm going to click the plus, and I'm going to add text. Now we've discussed this in other videos as well. If I create new text, that text, what I type in here, is just going to be what I see as like what it is I'm turning on. It doesn't show me the text that's inside of that element. So I'm going to just use a placeholder name, and I'm going to change the text of the speaker name. So I'm going to do speaker 1, because usually there's multiple speakers, right? So I'm going to do speaker 1. And then another thing that I shared earlier that I like to do, you do not have to, is when I'm creating the actual text that will show on the screen, I create some buffer on either sides of the text because it helps with a background that I like to add in. So I'm going to go space, space. I like to do 2 spaces. And then I'm going to do the names. So let's say we're John Smith, I don't know, and 2 more spaces. All right, so I've got that. I also want to make sure that the text is visible. If you look behind here, you can see it says John Smith, and you can't see the rest because it's too white on the background. So I always like to scroll down, and down here there's a background option. By default, the text is white, the background is black, but the background is invisible. It's transparent all the way down to 0. So I like to bring that bad boy up to about 70. You can play with different numbers and see what works for you. 70 seems to be a nice number for me. And now I'm going to hit OK. And now I've got this text up here. Now this text isn't going to live up here. That would be a little obnoxious. So I'm going to bring it down here, and I definitely don't want it this big. So I'm going to bring it down like maybe that. All right. So now I've got speaker 1. His name is Brother Smith, John Smith. You could go Brother Smith, but I like the first and last name. And there we go. Now, if it's just a regular member of the ward, no offense, but you know, we don't always know what their title is, and they're there because they're members of the ward, not because they're representing a specific organization. So I typically will just do first and last name for my speakers. Now that I have speaker 1, I usually have 3 in the can ready to go. Our ward sends out a bulletin the night before that tells us who the speakers are going to be. So I can pre-populate this. Or if I set up early enough before the meeting starts, I'll go in here and change that. So I've got speaker 1. So I'm going to add a text source. I'm going to call it speaker 2. And I'm going to do the same thing here. John's wife, Jane, is also speaking. Space, space, the name, 2 more spaces, scroll down, bring the background up to 70%. And then again, I like to resize it in the bottom. Now I've got a problem that you might notice. I've got two names on top of each other. That's because I have them both visible in here. So if you want to hide one, that's what these little eyeball things are for. If you check those or turn those off, the names will disappear, but they're still there when you need them. And that's going to be the key to how we get these on and off when we want to show the name momentarily. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Okay, so I've got speaker 1 and 2 both there ready to go. I'm going to do one more speaker, and I'm going to do speaker 3. Actually, you know what I'm not going to do? Well, yeah, I'll do speaker 3. And then I'll also do another one that I do as well for my actual unit. All right, so speaker 3, and they have a son who's also speaking today. His name is Billy. Okay, I did space, space, his name, 2 more spaces, and bring the background up to 70. Got to bring that into place. And I actually sometimes will purposely turn on another one so I can make sure they're kind of layered on top of each other about the right size, make them rather consistent. And I'm going to turn them all off. Okay, so now I've got my 3 speakers. I also, in my unit, you're going to have some of the same 3 people every Sunday. And that's going to be the bishop, the first counselor, and or the second counselor. So those ones I also created in here that I want to be there for all of them, and I'm not going to change those nearly as often. And I just think it's a hassle to have to change that every week. So I just keep those kind of static because that changes once every 5 years. So I'm going to do another one, and I'm going to, this time, I'm not going to use the bishop's name. I'm just going to say bishop. And add that. Now, in this one, I'm going to do a little differently than I did before. I'm going to do 2 spaces. I'm going to say bishop, what's another one I haven't done? Dean Brown, I guess. I just totally made that up. But anyway, you get the idea. Now, I did the space space, his title this time. But what if I want to do a little more, like the actual title of his calling? I'm going to do another 2 spaces, and then this time I'm going to say, in this case, my example word here is 46. 46 Ward Bishop. Okay, so now I've got that set up. If it doesn't seem like it aligned very well, you could add an extra space here or there to just make it look nice and pleasing. I find it's easier to do the second line in the same box than it is to do a second box with a different font size. That certainly can be done. If you like to do it that way, go for it. But I just find this is quite a bit easier and faster. And again, I'm going to turn my background to 70. And then on this one, I've got to highlight it. I'm going to resize it again, like I did with the others. And it's pretty centered. You can actually look here. It says I'm 631 pixels away from this side and 549 away from this side. So it's not really centered. I mean, if I look closely. Now it's a little closer to centered here. There's also a shortcut that I didn't show you yet, and I'll show you in a second how you can make sure it's actually centered like perfectly. All right, so here we have that, and I'm going to turn that off. Now, I mentioned that there's a couple different ways that you can do this when you're doing the live broadcast. Everything I've done here on this side so far has been on the preview window. None of it has actually shown up in my program or in the broadcast. So if I want something to show up, there's a couple ways to do that. Let's say the bishop is coming up because he's going to start off the meeting. I'm going to turn on, I'm already going to have it off, and we're going to be broadcasting. Here's our Zoom, here's our program. But now, once he started, he's going to start, hi, welcome, I'm, so-and-so, and I'll be presiding. That's when I'll click this on, but you're not going to see it yet until I hit transition. Now, I'm not transitioning away from main. I'm transitioning from the change I've made in main into the unchanged main. So if I hit transition, there it is. Now I go back to this, uncheck it, it's still there, until I transition back. So that's one way to do it. That way can be easy or clunky depending on how graceful you feel like you are. You decide. The other way that I've done this before is I'll take this whole thing, now that I have this the way I like it, and I'm going to right click on main, and I'm going to duplicate main, and I'm going to just call it main 2. You can call it something else. So now I have another scene. But in main 2, I leave the speakers on. And then I get main 2 prepped over here, and then this is still main 1. And you can see by the title up here which one I'm in, just so I'm not getting confused. Click transition, and then instead of having to click on the eyeball again, I could just transition back. So I don't have to do any extra clicks in between, and that's why I kind of prefer this method more often. It's easier to get things lined up, and then it's the same transition key back and forth. Keep in mind though, if I make a change in main to the text, that text will be changed in main 2 because that element, that source, will be changed everywhere in the program. So for example, this is what I had last week. I had this speaker, and like speaker 1 is John Smith. Well, this week, it's not John Smith anymore. Now, it's Dan... did I do Jones already? I don't know. Okay, so now Jan Jones is the first speaker. I'm going to click OK. Turn that on so you can see the preview of how it looks. Okay, looks good. And now that I have a new name in there with a different length, it's not as centered as it was before. And I mentioned there's a trick to make it look centered. Once I'm done getting the new name updated in here, I'm going to right click, then go to transform, and then down to center horizontally. And now it's as perfectly centered as it can get. Perfect. So I do that every time I change the name. Now, if I go up to main and turn that on, you'll notice that the new name is there, Dan Jones, but it's not centered because the text changes. The actual contents of that text will change across all of my scenes, but each scene can have its own placement. So it does not put that in the center. So when I make changes, if I have this main 1, main 2 system, then I only make the changes in main 2. They're there in main 1 if I really want them. Or you could just, if you're never planning on using them out of main 1, you could full on delete it. I just deleted this out of main 1. It doesn't hurt me and it doesn't change anything. Because if I go to main 2, they're all still there and I can still do that transition and back, even though they're not there. And that also helps confusion. So I recommend if you're gonna go with just using one main, then yeah, that's fine. But if you're gonna use a main and a main 2, it's probably easier to delete the text out of the main 1 and only have the text visible in main 2. That way you're not duplicating efforts and accidentally uncentering new text. I also created a first counselor, and I do purposely not put the name in, even though that doesn't change very often, because if it happens to change, fine. Now the first counselor is going to be Greg, what's another common one? Wright, I guess. Okay, and then I'm going to go down to the next one, next row, and I'm going to say this is the first counselor of 40. Now this is way uncentered. So in this case, I am going to, because I decided it's easier for me, I think, to just put it all on the same level. So I'll center it this way. Okay, and then let's bring that up to my same usual. I like to use 70. And then resize that. So it fits with the others. And then I'm just going to use this transform feature to get it perfectly centered. Don't center it vertically. If you center it vertically, it's in the center of the screen. You are in that lower third area. So just center horizontally. All right, I'm going to turn off speaker 1 and then transition. And there's the counselor, and then whoosh, transition back. If you want to change the font on this title to be smaller, you certainly can. And that's done in here like that. But the problem is, you might have noticed, it didn't just change the parts I had highlighted. It changed it for all of this one element, this one source. So that's why I was saying if you really want to have a different size font or different size text for the title, you could do a second element all by itself. The other problem with doing that is that means you now have to turn both of those on to have them both visible. Not worth the headache. This is free software. Now, I'm sure there's other plugins, and maybe someone in the comments can put in other plugins they use for titles. I'm just going with what's in there and what's simple. So you do what works for you. So I hope that helps you figure out how to make yours just that much better. Don't worry about trying to make this look too fancy. If you get so caught up in all these little intricacies, you might lose the actual benefit of having people focus on the message and the meeting. But if you've really gotten comfortable and you like to add those little enhancements, by all means, go ahead and do it. It's actually a nice touch, and I think it goes noticed, and people appreciate knowing who's speaking. This has been another video of STS Knows Best. I am your Steak Technology Specialist, Jared. See you on the next video.